Good afternoon, Professor. Thank you for joining us today. We are delighted to introduce you to our project, the Music Archive application. Our team members are Siyun Kim, Shib Kumar, Tatiana Rodriguez, Ignacio Arce, and Kevin Morrison. We are all programmers of the project. I'm going to start with the homepage. So this code imports the necessary dependencies. The component renders a basic homepage structure, which includes the netbar component, a div with the class homepage, and a subdiv with the class header. Within the header, there's an image of a vinyl record, a heading stating Shop Vinyls Now at Dynamo Vinyls, and a hyperlink button labeled Shop Now with an arrow icon. The homepage component is set to export as the default export from this module, making it available for use in other parts of the application. And we have here the CSS, and it creates an interactive arrow element that is going to be used in conjunction with the navigation element. Now, moving on to the navbar, this also imports the necessary dependencies. So within the navbar component, there is a state variable is logged in, initialized to false using the useState hook. The useEffect hook is utilized to check if there is a user item in the local storage, and if present, it sets the is logged in state to true. The component renders a navigation bar with the language selection dropdown, the application name, Dynamo Vinyls, and a set of navigation buttons. The buttons include vinyls, and depending on whether a user is logged in or not, it displays either my profile and sign out for logged in users, or log in and sign up for users who are not logged in. The handle logout function is defined to remove the user item from local storage and set is logged in to false when the sign out link is clicked. The navbar CSS styles a web page navigation bar using Flexbox for layout. Now, this vinyls component is a React functional component responsible for displaying a collection of vinyl records. It begins by importing necessary dependencies. Within this component, state is managed using the useState hook, initializing the vinyl state variable as an empty array. The useEffect hook is employed to fetch data from the API when the component mounts. The fetch function is used to make a GET request to the specified API endpoint, which is this one. The response is converted to JSON, and the resulting data is used to update the vinyl state with set vinyls data. The useEffect has an empty dependency array, ensuring it only runs once during the component's mounting. The component's render function returns JSX, which includes the navigation bar component with a long div prompt set to false. It also renders a div with a class name altCard. Within this div, a mapping operation is performed on the vinyls array, generating a series of div elements with the class name card for each vinyl record. Each card contains an IMG element displaying the album cover and various elements presenting information such as title, singer, category, price. And finally, this vinyls component is exported as the default export of the module, and its styling is here. So here we import the Nunito font from Google Fonts, and it applies to the entire document using the body selector. These styles are for displaying cards representing albums or songs, ensuring a consistent and visually appealing format.
So I'm going to start with the logging JSX file, the page for the login. This JSX file imports the necessary modules and assets at the beginning. The useState hook from React is used to manage state within the component, and useNavigate from React Router DOM is used for navigation. An image is also imported. The login component maintains its own state for username, password, and error using the state hook. The handle submit function is defined to handle the form submission event. This function prevents the default from form submission behavior. It sets the error state to false and then makes a post request to a local server with the username and password as the request body. If the server responds with a status indicating success, the response data is parsed at JSON. The password is added to the data, and then the data is stored in the local storage under the key user. The user is navigated to the route. If the server response indicates an error, the error state is set to true. The return statement of the component renders a login form. If the error state is true, an error message is displayed. The username and password input fields update their respective states whenever their values change. The handle submit function is attached to the forms on submit event. And at the end of the file, the login component is then exported for use in other parts of the application. The signup component maintains its own state for username, password, email, success, and error using the useState hook. The handle submit function is defined to handle the form submission event. This function prevents the default form submission behavior. It also sets the success and error states to false. And as the same for the login, it then makes a post request to a local server with the username, password, and email as the request body. And again, if the server responds with a status indicating success, the success state is set to true. If the server response indicates an error, the error state is set to true. The return statement of the component renders a signup form. If the success state is true, a success message is displayed with a link to the login page. If the error state is true, an error message will be displayed as well. And the username, password, and email input fields update their respective states whenever their values change. As the same for the other page mentioned, the login page, it also exports the signup component at the end of the file. Now for the profile, this profile component maintains its own state for user using the useState hook. The initial state is set to the user data retrieved from the local storage. We also have, again, the handle submit function, which is defined to handle a form submission event. This function prevents, again, from submission behavior, and that instead of using a post request, it uses a put request to a local server again with the username, password, and email as the requested body. This request also includes authorization token in the headers. After the server responds, the response data is parsed as JSON again. The user data is in local storage is updated as well, and the user is navigated to the route. The return statement of the component renders the profile form. The created at and updated at fields are displayed but disabled. The username, password, and email input fields display their respective states and update the use state whenever their values change. We again have the handle submit function, which is attached to the forms on submit event. Then again, at the end of the file, as the same with all the others, the profile component is exported so that we can use it in our other parts of the application. So now we have the admin page. This component is for the admin interface to manage users and the vinyl records. It uses the React useState hook to manage several pieces of state, including the current user data, vinyl record data, user data, the currently selected item and its index, the visibility of the add menu, the current option for adding a new item, and the input values for adding a new item. This component defines several functions for interacting with our API, including fetching vinyl records and user data, updating a user or a vinyl record, deleting a user or vinyl record, and also adding a new vinyl record or user. The use effect hook is used to call the fetch function when the component mounts, ensuring the initial data is loaded correctly. Now we go to the app.js, which imports the necessary modules and pages at the beginning. Routes and browser route components from React Router DOM are used for routing. We also have the 5-page components, the homepage, login, signup, vinyls, and profile are imported as well at the beginning of the file. The app components return a browser router component that wraps routes component. This component contains 5 route components, each representing a different path in the application. And each route component has a path drop that specifies the URL for the route and an element prop that specifies the component to render when the route is matched. So this is it right here. Now we go to the config.js. This is a pretty simple document. It imports 2 configurations objects from config.dev and config.prod files located in the utils directory. It checks the node environment variable to determine if the application is running in a development environment. If node environment is equal to development, then is development will be set to true. Otherwise, it will be false. And finally, index.js, it uses the React DOM.create root method to create a root React container at the DOM node with the ID root. This is typically for our div elements in our JSX file. It then calls the render method on the root container to render the app component. This is where the React application basically starts its lifecycle.